Molter with our podcast here at IntelliGRC, and I am really happy to have Edward Tuorinsky,
Yep.
and David Africano.
Tuorinsky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You say it from now on, so I don't ever have to say it again.
No,
okay. I'm just kidding.
Just pretend you're skiing. You're touring and skiing around the world.
Yes, touring, skiing. Okay, all right, got you. Okay, so yeah, we're recording here today, getting to know you guys from DTS. So first off, really quickly, for my own knowledge, does DTS stand for something, or is that just a quick shorthand?
So, do the security.
Security. Is that really it? Do the security.
That's what it is. We were a different brand. Because we came from the government contracting side, so we had a mix of some of the founders' names in there. And then, of course, being a government contractor, you have a 3-letter acronym. So we went to DTS, and since we've gotten heavy into cybersecurity over the last, 8-9 years, we actually own dothesecurity.com. We're going out with Do the Security.
Okay. So Do the Security was formerly a GovCon. Or at least the entity was.
We still have the GovCon side too.
Oh,
yeah.
You do? Okay. So you guys are GovCon and like MSSP commercial
Correct.
helping. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's really good and heavily involved in the CMMC space, I gather.
Yep. Yeah, we have two sides of the business. We have GovCon, we do DoD work, Fed civilian work, all kinds of software development, security work, and then we have a commercial side that focuses on MSSP and MSP side.
Gotcha. Okay, so you guys have grown, like significantly.
We're growing.
Yeah,
it's going in the right direction right now. The GovCon side, it is what it is in today's market, but we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, at the time of the recording of this, there's been a lot of upheaval on the government side. So
yeah,
I know that's
change is always opportunity, right? Always opportunity.
That's a good way to look at it. And then, so really quickly before we get into all the deep conversation, the hypotheticals and all the philosophy. No, we're not going to go that crazy. But before we get into everything, I'd love for everybody to kind of be introduced to you. So the way I like to have these conversations is always predicate the bulk of the more industry, cybersecurity, GRC specific conversations that we're having around people being able to know Ed and David on a semi-personal note, right? Because a lot of the time, and I've said this pretty much every time we've recorded one of these, people might know you guys, know your faces from like LinkedIn, but there's a person behind the cybersecurity professional, and I want people to know that side, right? So this could lead to a pretty lengthy discussion, and I actually hope for that. And I've always done one-on-ones, so that could make it even longer, and I hope for that. So could we start, maybe David, as your role is really kind of crucial to DTS, and then lead into Ed. So could we start with you, David? Just sure. Really the question is, where did you come from? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up that led you into being the security professional that you are today? And let people get to know you and some quirks about you and all the jazz, all that stuff. Start at the beginning.
No, sure.
What is the Sound of Music? Start at the very beginning.
No, absolutely. So I was born in Maryland in the 70s. Hung around for a little bit. My family's from Colombia originally, so age of 2, we moved back to Colombia. I lived in Colombia for 5 years. So at age of 7, I came back to the States, had to learn English. I've kind of been here ever since. From Maryland, my dad retired. We moved to Florida. That's where I'm at currently. Finished high school there. And then from there, I joined the Army at 17 and, went around the world for about 6 years and then came back. I'd always wanted to get into computer engineering, just something my mom always kind of spoke to me about. And when I got back, I started digging into that, and I was fortunate enough to get a position in the help desk where I started my IT career here in Melbourne, Florida, working for a home builder. And over the last 25 years, kind of just kept on learning and progressing. Eventually got to lead an IT team for another company, and then moved into cybersecurity and then into compliance. And if somebody would have told me when I was 20 that I would love to read long, voluminous books of federal regulation, I would say you're probably crazy, but here I am.
I'm in the same boat there. When I suck at reading, like reading comprehension and like retention, all that stuff. And look where we're at here with GRC. What is the joke about GRC, general reading comprehension or whatever it is? Yeah.
Right.
So sorry to cut you off, but totally same background.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, right. Well, and it's interesting. So like in the Army, I didn't do anything at all, like with computers or anything. I was a parachute rigger, so I packed parachutes for a living. And then when I got out, again, jumped in the help desk, started learning more, crawled my way up, and eventually found my way to DTS, where I met Ed, and they were kind enough to let me join, and here I am.
Wow. Wait, so how long have you been at DTS now?
6 months.
6 months. Oh, so
been here longer than 6 months. You're at a year, right?
No, I think it's like maybe 7 months.
Bro, he's already doing podcast episodes at 6 months. That's a lot of faith. That's a lot of faith in this guy.
He's here because he's great, and he comes with a wealth of knowledge. We're really glad to have him as part of the team.
Kyle on our side was speaking highly of you, David. He said he likes you a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Ed, let's take it back home with me, because obviously you've got relatively longer story to tell, right? So I would love to.
I don't know. I think David has a lot longer story. He's much older.
Well, than me, I'm going to come back and pry on David here in a minute, because he didn't give us any of the juicy details from the Army, but I also want to give you a chance to kind of weigh in here.
So I grew up in different places, but Western Pennsylvania. I was born outside of Pittsburgh, so I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, Penguins, Pirates. Goodness. Unfortunately, if you're something else, I don't want to hear about it. It's okay. Let's not talk about Aaron Rodgers. We just don't want to go down that path. But
if I was into sports, I know what you were talking about.
Oh, good. You're safe then.
I'm agnostic in that sense.
So grew up in the country, and then my mother actually joined the military later in life. So started to move around with her, different places, and my father together. Ended up in Yorktown, Virginia, and went to high school there. And then for some odd reason, that you can't tell my height, but I'm a taller gentleman. I got really good at wrestling, so I went to College of William & Mary for wrestling, and I had an ROTC scholarship also. They shut down the wrestling program my sophomore year. My freshman year, they shut it down for Title IX reasons. Football players got all the scholarships.
Yeah.
They cut the wrestling program. They replaced wrestling with women's synchronized swimming. Go figure. I decided to take my ROTC scholarship, and that's kind of led me down, the path that got me to here. So I went in the Army, and my first duty station was Korea. I was a logistician, and ended up in Seoul, but I was the S3 for the entire battalion. Battalion commander said, does anybody know how to turn on a computer? Like an idiot, I volunteered. I said, sure, I can turn on a computer. So I became the IT guy in Korea, and that kind of where it started. I built a LAN, I built a WAN, had contractors, networked all 10 computers. I think we got to 11 before I left, but we were geographically dispersed, so it was the first time that we could actually connect the computers without being in the same room. And we put some databases. There was access databases. It was revolutionary. We had a list of all the people in the battalion on one database. People thought it was mind-blowing. I'm like, well, it's not that complicated. And that kind of led me down that path. I got back from Korea. I was deployed to the Kosovo campaign. And then I got back from there, and I became the logistical IT kind of point of contact for my battalion. So at that point in time, we were using passive and active RFID to track assets. Believe it or not, we couldn't track anything back in the day. We knew where it was when it was at the port or at, the warehouse, but in transit, it was much more difficult. We knew it was on a plane, train, automobile. So we developed a system with SAIC to track all those parts. And so that really got me into larger databases, understanding the power and use of technology, and how it all put together. And we had, in the field servers set up and the whole thing. And, I was the only guy that apparently knew how to turn on a computer. So I was the guy all the contractors were talking to. I have no idea what they were saying. I just said, yeah, sure. Sounds good. And kind of went on.
Nice. Very encouraging.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
And you were on the Gov side, obviously, as the Army guy. So.
Oh yeah. I was the Army guy. I knew logistics. I know to track things. I understood that part of it. But they were talking about joins and relationships and many to many's, and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of stuff. So it's a many to many relationship. And no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah. You're coming from a logistics.
Quickly learned. And read a lot of books at the time because we didn't have that great internet, and kind of went into got out of the Army, went into government contracting, worked for NAVC, and that's where I really cut my teeth on. I was a contractor working for NAVC, and I developed a logistical program for the vertical launching systems. So at any one point in time, there's about 1.6 million parts in a vertical launching system. And there's lots of different systems in production. So you have older ones that are foreign militaries use. You have current ones that are on current ships, and there's different versions. And so anytime they needed to do maintenance or change something out, you needed to track the parts. And so developed the Oracle database for the Navy to help reduce they had about 300 to 400 people kind of manually processing all of this, reduce that down for them and be able to actually know where the parts were, what systems had them, if they came into the port, having the parts ready at the port, ready to go, or if a part needed to be flown out to a ship to be able to change it out. So that's really where I worked with developers and learned the ins and outs of how IT worked. And then it kind of went on from there in the career. There's a lot more story to go, but ended up here with David. We have the two parts of the business, the compliance, MSSP, cybersecurity, and then we have the GovCon side of the business. So trying to balance both of those. They are fundamentally different businesses, but there are similarities. So every day is a new day. It's exciting. Glad we have a great team, and also enjoy working with IntelliGRC. You guys have been a great partner, and we're really excited about what you have and where you're going with your product.
Oh my goodness, some things coming. I'm sure you've already seen some of it. It's
We've heard some people told us a couple things.
Yeah, I think since we're in beta for some of those features, I can talk publicly about them, at least in some sense. So I'm excited to get into that because that's really cool. And I'm actually really curious what your guys' thoughts on some of the nuances of what we're bringing to the app. But that's not the main driver here. I really want everybody to get to know you guys. I do want to ask you because this is like a really common thing that I'm 27 years old, so I'm still relatively young in my career, and when I first came into doing CMMC work back in 2020, when at 1.0 actually went live, or at least was announced. The one thing that we kept seeing over and over and over again through the NIST and MEP program was like exactly what you were talking about in your Army experience of like accountants or the lead, the CFO, or somebody who has no like technical training or no technical acumen, even like in a fundamental sense, is kind of just, it's dumped on their shoulders to do all the IT and security stuff at their company. And more, recently to get them ready for CMMC. And so like, it sounds, so my question to you is like, when you volunteered, you said to your chagrin at one point, right, you volunteered to do all the IT work essentially. Did they make you do any kind of formal training or read, like, did they make you go get any certs or read any book? I mean, you were in Korea, right? Like, what programs were there for you to grow other than your own personal devoted time to learn?
Nothing. So
Nice.
two answers I have to that question. So, back in the day, there was nobody else. Signal eventually took over all the computing, but back in the day, the Signal Corps was really radio transmission. Right. It was so infantile at the time. Like I said, we had over 1,000 people and we had 10 computers. I mean, that's what it was, and so there was nobody else, period. And kind of go to the other point. Why appoint, a CFO or somebody to cybersecurity when there are actually people who know what they're doing that might be better appointed. Back in the Army day, there was no one else. They're like, who's the sucker that's going to jump on this grenade? And apparently, I'm the one that volunteered for it. So, I got books. I read. I learned. I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, that's the best way to learn is just to do it and screw it up.
Fail quickly is what our founder Ozzy says all the time. He says, "Fail quickly," and that's the best way to learn quickly.
Oh yeah,
a lot of stuff. Yeah. So, like David, did you have a similar? I mean, you said your mom really pushed you towards like computer engineering, computer technology, information technology, information assurance, things like that as just a principle, right? But like, when were you first thrown in the deep end? Was it at DTS or was it?
No, it was literally my first job. I happened to befriend a gentleman at a island party. So we have the river and we have islands on it.
Yeah.
We go to the island and we cook and have beers and hang out, whatever. And so I got invited there by a girlfriend. This is before I lived in Melbourne. And we got to talking, and he's cooking hot dogs, and we're going back and forth, and he's saying, what are your plans? This is after I got out of the Army.
Yeah.
He's like, what are your plans now? And I'm like, well, I got to go to college because I want to go into IT, but I don't know anything about it yet. Like, I know how to break a computer, but that's about it. And so we kept on talking, and then, he nonchalantly offered me a job at his help desk up here in Melbourne working for that home builder. And I was like, well, what does it pay? And then he told me, I was like, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So I moved from South Florida to Melbourne to start that job. Zero training, no college, and I got thrown in the help desk, literally. So,
dude, help desk is
brutal.
That was my first job. Technically, I was at an apprenticeship doing like high-level help desk for like web development tickets and things like that for other companies. It was just an apprenticeship that took like low-level projects to give experience to newbies and give them actual real work to do. And so they were able to pay those apprentices. So it was like, just barely livable wage. But yeah, like help desk and being thrown into the grind in that sense, I could not have been more thankful for the stress that came with that. Be honest.
Yeah, and the learning, like every ticket was learning, like because if I didn't know, I'd have to go back and ask the senior guys, and they'd show me, and then I learned. So that was always good. It actually that greenness of being in the help desk is how I met my wife eventually.
Hey, there you go.
She had put in she worked in the same company. She worked in accounting ticket.
Yeah,
and I show up, Mr. Green. It was like a month. I was a month in, and she put in a ticket for a problem. I show up, and I knew like 3 commands at the time, still learning. And she's like, "Well, I have a word problem." I'm like, "Well, sounds like a C: format problem. So let me go ahead and get started on that." And she's a little savvy, and she was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm fixing your computer." She goes, "No, you're about to wipe my computer."
Oh God!
And from there, I always say that's when she fell in love with me, but she says otherwise. So.
Oh yeah, no, you're probably right. Poor guys here. No, I'm just kidding. That is hilarious. So yeah, I feel like the help desk thing, there's so many security professionals that haven't had that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
They kind of go right from college into like not necessarily a higher role, but a different type of role that oftentimes for people who work from the ground up without like college, like myself, I couldn't afford college. So like it was ground up type work. There's a lot of guys that go into that, guys and girls that go into that and haven't had the benefit of being so stressed out in like that low risk learning environment. And I feel like there's a huge benefit to that. I feel like as much as cringy as help desk work might end up being for many, it is probably one of the most fundamental things that a good cybersecurity or IT, like high level IT manager could ever experience. I don't know if you guys agree.
It's a great place to cut your teeth at.
Cut your teeth, yeah. So that's super interesting about both of your careers. So you both were in the Army.
Correct.
What's the time difference? So you were in Korea, Ed, and then David, this was how many years ago since you left the Army?
So I joined in 92. I got out in 98.
92, 98. Okay.
Yeah. I was 97 to active 97 to 2001, then reserve after that.
Gotcha. Okay. So you guys were relatively close in the time that you spent. Relatively close. That's really cool. That's really cool. And that was, I'm assuming that led to, for both of you, at least when it came to your resume, better opportunities and things like that, at least on the government side with gov contracting, or no?
It depends on who's interviewing you.
I mean, there's definitely value in being a veteran and meeting other veterans in corporate. There's because there's something about it where, like, what this person is made of at a fundamental level. They might be, better or worse, whatever, but fundamentally, like that they operate kind of like you do.
Yeah.
And that I've always found that helpful.
There's some level of discipline and character.
Yep.
Yep.
Like we've all been reprogrammed, right?
We've all been wiped.
Like broken down, reprogrammed, and it's like I feel as if, and not always, but most of the time, I feel as if I'm able to jump into a group of civilian veterans and like instantly be able to operate with them to fix a situation.
Get a lot done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a huge benefit to at least the training when it comes to organization and discipline. Like discipline is huge for any career field, but especially I think rigorous managerial IT. I think probably one of the bigger reasons why budgets aren't always approved for security software and security programs and things like that is like the lack of the ability to push off instant gratification and focus and prioritize on what the largest needs are. And that's discipline. That takes a lot of discipline. So no, I get that. That makes sense. I mean, I'm assuming obviously 27 years old, so that what do I know? But yeah, you guys talking to experienced professionals here. So, okay, so let's get into DTS because I'm actually I don't know a lot about DTS, even though you guys are one of our partners. I work on the services side, training MSPs and working with MSPs who want to become the type of MSP that can really support DoD div contractors. So I would love to actually kind of I know you mentioned there's two sides of the house at a high level, but I'd love to actually pry in just from both of your all's experience working at DTS. And I mean, obviously you being the founder and CEO of it, what is DTS? We talked about the acronym, do the security, but what does the ETS do? Let's start with the government contracting because I'm really interested about the type of deliverables and work that you guys get to do for the government.
So we started in 2011, and it was after years of working in industry. I'd worked at some small companies and grown them, and then I had the bright idea to start a company, which at the time I thought it was a great idea. And started out just as a small, working with clients that really as a subcontractor. I worked with some of the primes, and we started out doing education and training, software development, and system integration. So that was kind of the basis of DTS. So it was large scale ERP Back in the day, it was all of the ERP programs in the Navy, Army, and Air Force. So Navy ERP, I can't remember. The Army had a they all had programs. And I was always brought in as the logistical point of contact. How do you integrate the logistical systems into the ERP system so that the finance can talk to contracting can talk to logistics, and logistics can talk to whoever. And it was never that easy. For an example, just the sub program for the Navy, when they have a national stock number, they put a prefix or a suffix on it that is specialized for the sub, so it's a sub part. But the problem in a software program is it's set for the national stock number. There is no prefix or suffix, So those little things start to break the whole system down. And so, that's really where I cut my teeth, that intersection between finance, acquisition, and logistics. And having the logistical system be able to tell, it's an ERP system. So it's like Walmart. When you order underwear and Walmart checks the inventory and says, oh, we need to order another, shipload of it because we're out. The military couldn't figure that out. And so they can now. They've gotten much better. This was way back in the day. So really, fundamentally, that's where I kind of grew the company out of, and then had some great people join the company over the years and help grow out our education and training, our web development, our data warehouse business intelligence. We've built human capital management systems. We've done the deployment of the electronic health records for DHA. We've done Office of Whistleblower Protection. So all kinds of stuff. We've worked at FAA. We've worked at Homeland Security. So it kind of grew organically. And then in 2019, really when, it wasn't CMMC at the time, it was when the new requirements for cybersecurity came out. We went and looked at it. Me being the genius I am, I had an intern. I'm like, hey, figure this out, and then once I sat down and started to go through this, I said, well, this is pretty complicated. There's a lot of things in here. And it reminded me of yesterday when I was going through the Oasis Plus supply chain risk management requirement they have in there. If no one knows about that, that's another rabbit hole that I don't think contractors are even close to being ready for.
So I would definitely agree with you. I also think, just to make a point on that, I don't think many security professionals have had to prioritize that in their consulting either, because it's not really been as trivial of a requirement as it is like with the upcoming Rev 3 implementation, right, and the ODVs from the government on Rev 3. I mean, Rev 3 introduces a whole, family on supply chain. So it's just a matter of, it's almost like, to me, it's one of those, and this is just my gut reaction, but to me, it's one of those like obvious things that should have been done, should be being done. But just like DFAR 7012, all the way through essentially 2020 with DFAR 7019 and 20, it's almost like a novelty. It's almost like a novelty to what gets prioritized by businesses. And so, like, if it's never been prioritized by businesses, it really is a novel thing for many. Supply chain risk is going to be one of those that, just like DFAR 7012, there's going to be, my guess is that there's going to be a gap in implementation, a gap in understanding the requirements. And thankfully, the Rev 3 requirements are not, like, in my opinion, crazy complicated when it comes to supply chain, right? You're really just defining how you're going to protect the supply chain, what requirements, am I going to require this vendor to have certain security assurances above and beyond the DFAR 7012 requirements? Am I going to have a checklist, or am I going to require them to have an SBOM? Like, whatever you're going to define for yourself and implement that. But man, I don't even think many people are even ready to kind of think in those terms. I mean, they're in the middle of still figuring out how to implement MFA on switches. Like, you know what I mean?
One of the amazing things about this journey through CMMC and working with smaller companies, specifically medium-sized companies, is the lack of understanding of information technology governance, like just basic governance 101, how to manage a system. And it's just not there. And I think you have to have that in order to build out that framework. So that's been, I think, always interesting working with customers to educate them up as quickly as possible on some of those basic concepts.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Ed, you guys have that MSP side of the house. So you talk the governance side, but you have that MSSP side of the house. I'm assuming a large. This is an assumption, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming a large chunk of your all's customers are going to be people who have no one in-house to be the CMMC guy or just general GRC guy for themselves, and they need somebody who, I mean, that's the whole point of outsourcing.
That's usually it. Yeah. I mean, you can. I think you can have good IT guys who have no GRC or governance
100%,
experience.
100%.
And so it's not, I think when companies reach the point where they have to bring somebody like DTS to help them, the internal team sometimes kind of take it as like, oh, we failed, but it's a specialized set of understanding to meet these requirements. So really, we're here to help the companies who have IT teams, and we're here to augment them, I think. And then the ones who don't have IT teams, we're also here to help them. So
right. Yeah, that is probably the best coupling I see from external service providers. I mean, obviously it's nice to have cloud products that low maintenance and all that jazz, but I see the best external service provider duo being for a small or even a moderate size mom and pop shop who has desperate IT needs in-house and doesn't have anybody that really, they're not like where Ed was in the Army, where he just gets picked and thrown. I mean, they're probably operating in that way, but they have opportunities now to outsource that, which Ed, you obviously didn't. And then they also need the coupling of IT with, okay, now we need to make sure we do IT in a way that's not going to lose us contracts. So I think, that's the benefit that if the MSPs that we are working with, I mean, you guys being one of them, but the MSPs that we are really trying to partner with are ones that are awesome at the IT side, of course, right? That's the whole reason they exist in the first place, but are also not going to leave their customers high and dry with the CMMC requirements for external service providers. That has been probably, in my opinion, I think that is the number one priority for companies right now, DIB companies right now, is to make sure that if you're using an MSP, if you don't have the funds or the ability to have an in-house staff, if you're going to use an MSP, and I think many agree with me, you have to make sure that you vet them, that they're not going to screw you during your CMMC assessment, because they're not ready to show that they have a background checklist for their staff that's touching your system, or that they that they actually have a CRM, or they, whatever it is, that they actually can be the type of MSP that you can use for CMMC and not get yourself, get your Achilles tendon cut because of them.
Yeah. Well, are you ready for some good content now on that topic?
Yeah. So that leads me, I think, into what is going to be most important from our conversation, because you guys are doing this live. I mean, you guys are doing this every day. I mean, we are too, and so are many others, but I think everybody can benefit from the experience and also the gripes and complaints of the lived experience. Although, again, try to keep it upbeat and lighthearted, but yeah, there's some real things that people need to be aware of. So I wanted to ask you, before we get into, I think, what you're chomping at the bit to talk about, Ed, I wanted to ask you, so far, with your experience with DIB contractors, is your overall perspective of how your ability to support them, their ability to listen to you and heed your advice and heed your counsel on implementing, is it positive, or is it not looking so good?
I think it needs to be vetted on both sides. And that's really where I was going back to. You're talking about understand the MSP, vet the MSP. We were one of the first MSPs that went through DIB-CAC assessment. We went through it in October of 23. So we're almost coming up on our 3-year assessment. And that really didn't do anything for us in the market space because people didn't know. So we have the government contracting side. We have to be compliant. We know how that customer base works. And the whole part of this program is the DoD wants to trust you with their information.
Right.
They could give a hoot. I was going to say some curse words, but I avoided it. So now you have a hoot on there. So that's going to be
a good
transcript
filler.
So they don't care about your intellectual property. They don't care about your PI. They don't care about anything on your side. All they want to care about is their data. And so, bringing that perspective over, and this is what I tell people, when you're looking for an MSP, you have to understand and how you're going to partner together. And I watch MSPs that do just compliance. They don't care about anything else. Some of them do IT, but they don't know anything about compliance. But for our approach, we look at compliance, security, and business operations. Those three things have to come together and do it right. If you're going to spend all this money upgrading your systems, putting in security, also do the security, not just the compliance. You can be compliant and not secure. You can pass this audit and still have so many vulnerabilities in your system that's easily to export information. You could protect all the DoD's data and your intellectual property sitting out there on the web, not protected at all. People can steal information out of your company because the DoD doesn't care about that. You can meet compliance and not do right for your company. You can do both, and then now you can't operate your company because you're so locked down, you can't send an email to anybody. So that's where I really want the market space to understand is find a partner that's going to work strategically with your business. And you have to understand this. We really try to teach our customers to be able to monitor us also. Understand it. Like David was saying with his wife, what are you doing? You're going to wipe my computer. You don't know what you're doing. We want our customers to question why we're doing it. How is it helping with either compliance, security, my business, and be able to come back. Now, some of our IT professionals aren't happy with me when I do that, but I see customers that wholeheartedly say, just do it for me and take care of it. And they don't truly understand what's going on. Right. And they're being put in a very, very bad situation. Mm-hmm. And they won't know until something bad happens.
Right. And that is not the intention of a compliance framework. That never has been. I mean, I actually really agree with the pushback many give to the phrase that compliance isn't security, only in that if a compliance framework in the spirit and intent, we use that phrase a lot in GRC, the spirit of the intent, or the spirit and intent mm-hmm. of a requirement or of a regulation or whatever it is truly implemented, then there is intrinsic security principles built in to truly implementing it. If you're just trying to follow the letter of the law, right, without truly caring about, I wrote a blog here recently about the CMMC Level 2 assessment guide, just taking everybody back to the basics with it. And one of the whole reason that I wrote that blog is because I don't want people to just, when we do our service engagements, we're teaching MSPs or we're helping OSCs. I don't want our customers, and I think you guys agree, and you just said it, to just implement the bare minimums because the DoD said so, or because their IDIQ requirements say so, or like whatever it is. I want them to actually adopt these requirements. One of the reasons is especially because of what you said, because they're going to be spending all this money on it anyway. Why not benefit from the actual implementation and adoption of those requirements in their fullness? Like let it actually, I talked to Carter Schoenberg, a really well-known guy in the CMMC mm-hmm. industry, founder, or not founder, but he works with Soundway. He has a really unique perspective on even like doing risk assessments that are all about assigning dollar values to every single risk, because what's the purpose of business? I mean, okay, this is going to sound capitalistic and greedy. I don't think it should, but what's the purpose of business? It's to make money and provide for our families. So it's like, if you're going to assign and think about all this money that's going towards implementing the requirements, actually adopt them so that it can save you money towards mitigating risk in the long run. Like, I feel like that is so often missing in the perspectives. And this is not just because I think, and I've said this before, this is not just because I think that OSCs are arrogant, or although I think that happens sometimes, but that they're arrogant or that they're stupid or anything like that. I think a lot of the time it's because they want to provide for their family's best, and they see the time that they're allocating towards implementing CMMC or whatever it is, when they've never maybe had a breach or something like that, as a deprioritization of other really important things that actually show up in real time as putting food on their tables.
And that's I mean, I really think that's the governance I was talking about before. It's like everybody knows you need a firewall, right? But what you need to do with that firewall is the question. Intrinsically, it's going to block traffic incoming, all sorts of things. But how are you actually managing that device, right? Are you ensuring that it's secure? Do you know who's logging into it, right? It's to me, it's always the non-technical that really causes not just DIP companies, but really companies in general to have their information security programs fail, because they don't have anything to kind of build up to, right? They just know, I need a firewall, or I need to do this, I need computers, right?
Yeah.
And that's the extent of
I just need
to that's the extent of their knowledge. And you start talking about some of these kind of long thought requirements of implementing these things.
Yeah.
Technology, the technical controls are always the easiest to implement. It's the management of the system that always becomes the tall pole in the tent, I think.
Yeah, it's the administrative governance. It's
absolutely,
like writing and enforcing policies, procedures, all the things that everybody kind of, we started off the conversation, David, nobody ever thought that I'd be the guy writing documents all the time. That is the field that is in most desperate need, because nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do it. Yeah, that's weird.
It's like it's the pillar that all the technical controls hang on, right? That's one of the reasons why the vast majority of the controls in CMMC have an objective about defining or identifying something. Are you identifying the cryptographic mechanisms that you're using on remote access sessions? Well, if you haven't implemented Objective A for identifying those things, you're failing. You're failing the technical side, because you have to. It's predicated on what you've defined and documented and baselined. By the way, everybody know that when there's a technical thing, you should be baselining that. That should be part of your baseline for 341 and 342. Anyway,
and there's things like that, like baseline. Like, people don't have a good understanding of what an actual baseline is, right? And what it should include. And so I think this is why we're in business, is because we're good at doing those things, and we're able to help our customers not only prepare for it, go through, but we're there afterwards to maintain that information security program.
Yeah, that's a whole separate topic, which I do want to get into with you guys, because every MSP is different. I'm just from our experience, when it comes to continuous monitoring, every MSP is different. IntelliGRC has an approach to continuous monitoring built into the app, and we hope to obviously expand on it. But the way people do continuous monitoring is some are all about it being a natural, organic thing. I don't really think that that's going to work for an assessment, because how do you prove that to an assessor that you're organically monitoring controls? And I think that's just like the thought process is, we make sure the firewall still has split tunneling disabled, because we wouldn't approve a change requesting that it would be enabled or allowed. Split tunneling will be allowed, like those type of perspectives. And I'm like, no, I think it's pretty clear. You have to actually have a rigorous means of not just alerting and monitoring, but also review your implementation requirements against what's actually happening in the system as a means of continuous monitoring. But anyway, that's another tangent. I wanted you to finish your thoughts, so sorry about that. Sorry.
No, that was it. That's kind of what just popped into my head. So.
Yeah. I think that. What are your thoughts, Ed?
you said something earlier when you said, "Oh, I've never been breached," and I'm not going to get into the technical side of it. We all know you can just buy Microsoft and you'll be completely fine. It's CMMC compliant.
Oh gosh. You did not just say that. You did not just say that.
I kind of got through without laughing, but I didn't. But from a business perspective, what does a breach mean? I've had this conversation with my executive staff, and back in the day when you were leaving your job, what did you do? You went on the shelf, you got all the binders with all the SOPs and all the policies and procedure, and you walked out the door with them. To me, as a business owner, that's a breach,
Mm-hmm.
And so really going back to implementing good programs, what happens? People come and go all the time, and maybe they're not intentionally, but everybody seems to have this really clear, exactly definitive knowledge of everything they did in their last job. I'm like, oh, you're not that good of a memory. You obviously took that from your last job and brought it over here. And so, breach is, to people, I think they think a breach is a ransomware attack. And then as long as I'm not getting ransomware, I'm not sieving data out. And as I have developed my knowledge of cybersecurity, I'm not a cybersecurity expert by any means. And that's why we have people like David and Kufre and John and all these other people that are way smarter than me. I look at it from a business perspective. And when I'm looking at these administrative controls, like you said, how often do I need to check to make sure something is not? Hey, an engineer left yesterday, and if you have your own IT staff, they left yesterday, maybe they just turned off split tunneling because they just wanted to be a dick, I don't know. So the 800-171 requirements to me are very beautiful because they bend in on each other. I view it as this
they do
beautiful
really well
sphere where if you miss one here, another one's going to catch it over here. So if you follow that model, it kind of protects yourself from yourself, in there. But you have to string it all together. If you miss it at 3.1.1, you're going to find it over here. And I really enjoy the beauty of the model. But administratively and from a governance standpoint, you still have to do it. And that's a business question. And Steve, that's where it really comes in as a business owner of, I implemented this program, I got my certification, now it's going to cost me how much to maintain it? I'm not going to get audited for 3 years. Why am I going to spend that money? And I've had this argument with CEOs. What is the minimum level of governance I can do? How many meetings do I have to have? Can I do this once a year? Can I do it every 2 years? Can I do it once a quarter? And I'm like, you define your program. Some of these things, there's an annual audit, obviously. Some of the things are more written in stone. But a lot of these business owners are saying, what is the minimum level I can do to stay compliant? And I'm trying to change the conversation. It's like, what can you do to stay secure and compliant and operate your business? And it's not going to cost you that much money to keep maintaining this. But in 3 years, when you come back to DTS and say, sorry for walking away from you 3 years ago, now I need to get ready for my next audit. Guess what? It's going to cost a lot more money.
The initial implementation costs are always more expensive than the maintenance cost in general. But if you keep stopping your implementation and start over, essentially, you're going to be recurring that initial implementation cost that it's significantly exponential to what it is to just maintain the licenses and the little bit of overhead for the meetings. Like, well, maybe I'm exaggerating, but maybe I don't think it's as much little overhead. There is a lot of effort that does go into maintaining, but it's still pennies on the dollar compared to an initial overhaul of a system that doesn't have any of it implemented. So when you're talking about the talking to CEOs and trying to make sure that, like, you're trying to change the conversation, how do you feel that that's going with many of them?
Well, the ones that are becoming our customers is going well.
You kind of vet your customers.
Well, we do now. Lessons learned.
Nice.
Well, once again, it's a business conversation.
Right.
You're trying to generate revenue. You're trying to support the staff, and taking on customers that maybe you shouldn't. And so we really try to go back and forth, and it's not always a good fit. And there are a lot of different solutions out there. There's a lot of different providers.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but it has to be, the right fit. We have a program that we want to partner with you. We do work with the DoD. We know how their mindsets are, and we continually to evolve our program. And as with your software, you're not just sitting there and being like, it kind of works. We're just going to stop here. We're not going to do anything else. And I view that in this compliance MSP journey, a good partner is going to evolve.
Yeah.
Because your program should evolve. And that's what I tell our customer. I said, compliance is your first step. We'll get you there. But now we're on this journey over the next 3 years to, as I said, evolve your program. Let's protect your data. Let's add, we'll make things more efficient. We'll add in some tools. Because that race to get compliant is kind of crazy. You're going as fast and as hard as you can to get there. And yes, you meet the letter of the law. Now let's spend the next 3 years developing your security program. Let's integrate it with your business processes. All of a sudden, now you have a shop of developers and you have a development lab. That's going to change your baseline, change your SSP, change how you operate. You didn't have an Azure Gov cloud environment before. Now you do. So it's okay. Let's evolve with you so you can. The whole reason you're here to make money, and we're here to help you make money, help you stay secure, so the DoD trusts you with their data. Right.
Yeah, I think that is one of what you just said is one of the things that I think it's on one perspective it's what's best for the DIB because of just the amount of work they got to get done, but in a way it's a little bit of a detriment of the CMMC program. Because, it used to be a kind of maturity model focused, very similar to ISO type or whatever, the ISO type approach to certification or accredit. It's not really accreditation, but you get what I'm saying. Like 27001, for example, there's an element built into the ISO 27001 that CMMC is missing. And that's this non-conformity type. You're going to mature over time. We're going to track that you're maturing over time. Whereas with CMMC, it's like you have it implemented. I mean, we have the 180-day POAM closeout, and you have the minor 10-day reevaluation after an assessment, all that jazz. But it's not really a maturity model. It's you either are doing it or not. And to the spirit, I think that's probably what's best for the DIB and for the DoD right now to just get requirements put in place. People put it in place, but I think to the more business, we actually use the term culture. I mean, we use that a lot. It's implementing security programs shifts culture.
Absolutely.
No matter what people want to say, it will change your culture when people actually have to put in a change request to make a change to something, or when people actually have to, fill out a checklist when somebody leaves the company. That shifts culture. But even with that, having a more mature a partner to help you with this, but having a more mature foundation for, okay, we are going to evolve because it's what's going to save us money in the long run, right? It's going to actually be what's best for our books at the end of the year. And then it's going to reduce the risk greatly involved in that, with risks being exploited.
I think that's the name of the game, is the reduction of risk. A lot of times people confound cybersecurity with protection. I think cybersecurity is there to reduce risk because, I'm of the school of thought that not if, but when it's going to happen. Yeah. And when it happens, what have you done in your governance program to reduce the risk of damage, so containing it, and then also how are you going to recover? Have you thought about recovering? Have you tested your recovery procedures? Like those, because like, again, under the if not when umbrella, You get hit, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you know what to do? Have you thought about what you're going to do? And a lot of people don't, right?
Right.
A lot of people are like, I have backup, I'm good.
And to your point of what you said earlier, Ed, about, there's obviously a little bit of language in DFAR 7012 and stuff about proprietary information being protected on the government side, just that they have an obligation to the contractor to protect some of their data when shared. But you're right, like, all of this is about protecting CUI, the government's data.
Mm-hmm.
If and which is the reason why at the end of the day there's no business continuity requirements in CMMC.
Yeah. Correct.
Or there's no BCP plan test requirement, or it's all about incident response because their data is at risk. So it's I totally agree with you that at the end of the day, I think one of the things, a takeaway from this would be, obviously CMMC is something that is extreme, and it's good that it's extreme. It's got a lot of requirements. It's impactful. Rev 3 is going to make it in some ways even more challenging. But just implementing that as the letter of the law is never going to be what we recommend. We're always going to be like, okay, once you do the things to keep your business operational by keeping your contracts, by implementing these requirements, now it's time to move on to actually putting your big boy pants on and becoming a company that cares about security fundamentally, like by design.
And
once you get just started.
Going back to the business side of it, as an MSP and MSSP, going the next steps and evolving with your customer, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Once you come up with a cookie cutter, this is how we do it, set it up, templated documents, rinse and repeat, your margins get bigger. And so there's a negative incentive on the MSP and MSSP side to partner and evolve, because it's changing. You have to change. You have to put R&D. We put R&D into what we're doing. And so the DIB contractor is saying is what are they buying and what are they getting? And maybe that's what they want. I don't recommend that, but that's going back to us vetting our customers. If you just want this, if you want a tiny enclave solution, you're operating in 2 environments, yes, you can get that audited. You can't operate a business out of it, but as long as you're keeping DoD's information in and you're saying it goes no place else, it'll pass. It doesn't make any sense if you grow your business and you're probably going to have to migrate into another solution. But what really are you looking for? And on my side is the pressures of, we're really good at, we can do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, done, set up, move on to the next customer. Yeah. I don't care if you pass the audit or not, and just print money. And so if you look at it from MSP, there are drivers that are disincentive to really what the intent of the program is. It is.
Yeah, this is a good
point.
point.
So there's a lot of pressures on both sides. Yeah. You have, I don't want to spend money. I want to make as much money as possible. I want you to protect my data. And that's where the business owners, the MSPs have to do what they do. I mean, don't fault them for making money. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
The DIB contracts, I understand of what they want. And I've had a lot of conversation with CEOs, and this needs to be part of your strategic plan. Where is it? And you can put in different solutions along the way. It should be part of your budget. It should be part of your short-term, long-term, midterm, long-term program, because it's not going away. And I think the companies that ingrain it faster are going to be at an advantage as Rev 3 comes out, as CMMC Level 3 will come out. When we get into supply chain risk management, the companies that are taken seriously, I think, are going to have that competitive advantage in the DIB. I won't get into my whole DIB speech that'll piss everybody off, but the DoD is trying to tell industry, come to us with all the tools, knowledge, skills, expertise to do the job. And if you don't, then don't come to us.
No.
There's a lot more around that. But the DoD is really trying to say, you provide us a value, and we should not have to provide you with everything for you to provide that value. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. So it's moving in that direction. When Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop, they're building a joint strike fighter, the DoD goes to their facilities. They work off of their devices and off of their hardware and their runways. Now they obviously share things too, but the shipbuilding industry is really integrated. But Newport News Shipbuilding is not a government entity. That shipbuilding, they can build a ship there. The government doesn't. There's a lot of integration there, but it's not the Department of Navy shipbuilding facility. It's the Newport News Shipbuilding facility. The reason the Navy hires them is because they have all the tools, equipment, expertise, knowledge to build a ship. And I think that's what they're trying to tell the service industry.
I think, I definitely think that's true, especially from the government's perspective. I would say that both the government, MSPs, and OSCs are in a pickle. And what I mean by that is using your example of the shipbuilder in Newport News. There is no doubt in my mind that there are contractors just like that who own facilities like that, places to build their ships or whatever the example is, that were the government not to have that contractor in their facilities, they would not be able to produce that deliverable, just because the government doesn't own facilities like that or work with facilities like that. And I think that that's pretty obvious, but so I think, I like that the government is blunt, especially Mr. Galuli over at the DoD and Katie Arrington. I like that they're blunt about what the government's perspective is, and I encourage them to keep doing so. I also want to empathize with OSCs as much as I can to say that it's not that you shouldn't implement the requirements. Absolutely do that. You have to. This is our nation's security that we're talking about, our national defense. But also know that the government needs to also consider ways that they can help the DIB more. I'm not talking from an incentive perspective, or I'm talking from an incentive perspective, not an entitlement perspective. I'm saying if the government, because this is a detriment to the government if it loses the DIB, because the DIB just doesn't implement the requirements and they do only commercial work, or they just leave, they go out of business, or whatever the case may be. It's a two-way street.
The DoD has implemented grant programs. Every state has a grant program, especially for manufacturing. They're going down that path. I know some things I can't talk about, how they're actually going down even more to help companies get to a compliant state so they can stay in business. They are very concerned mainly with the small,
it's the majority.
They're focused on the small businesses. My concern is the medium-sized businesses. Not in terms of NAICS codes, they're still small, but it's the companies that have been in business for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, anywhere from 50 to 500 people. Those are the really hard ones because they've been operating for a long time.
Yeah.
Under 10, they're talking about that and barrier to entry. I do get that, and I think they need to do something. But if you've been doing it this way for 30 years and now you have to change everything, and you have on-prem, you have Google, you have AWS, you have Azure Gov, it gets very complicated very quickly on the flow of CUI, and it can get, astronomically expensive, almost to the point of, I'm just not going to do this.
Yeah, we have had several. I personally have had conversations with people about, over a period of time, trying to help them understand what the requirements are, and obviously part of that being an opportunity for us to earn services work to help them, but just also trying to be ethical and honest about the reality of the cost that's coming their way if they really do want to do this. We've had people explicitly tell us that they've had to lay people off, and especially during COVID, this happened pretty significantly during COVID, but they've had to lay people off and essentially move on from all government work, even though it was a significant portion of their revenue, because it wasn't enough revenue for them to justify the cost of implementation. And
no, that's something I always find interesting. Is it almost seems as if sometimes our industry looks at cybersecurity, information security programs as a requirement to pass the certification, right? And I'm like, so just imagine you're not doing any work with DoD. You don't have to do CMMC. You're telling me that you're not going to put in a program to manage your cybersecurity regardless? And that's what blows me away is how this whole thing happened is, government was sending out contracts. Contractors were signing them. Yep, no problem. We got 1-800-171. And coming to find out, nobody was doing it.
Right.
And it's like and I understand the bottom line, but at the same time, I feel as if the majority of companies just do not budget for cybersecurity, period.
Well, that's 100% what's happening.
It's a cost that they don't understand, and they don't understand the down road effects of failing that mission, right? Like that. But it's interesting how now the DIB customer really thinks about it as if, well, I only need to do this if I can get the certificate to get this contract. And for like an old sister like me, I'm just like, I can't believe companies wait for this CMMC thing to happen before applying cybersecurity or governance to their programs.
Yeah, I think that's true. I definitely think that's true. The part that obviously I want to be lighthearted and I want to be optimistic about it all, because I am. I think companies are actually doing a really good job of moving in the right direction. It's just we still have stragglers, obviously. But one thing that I keep hearing, and in a sense it's true, in a sense it's true, but one thing I keep hearing especially from the DoD is you've had these requirements since 2016. You've had them since 2017. And in a sense, that is true. We've had the DFAR 7012 since 2016, 2017, but not in the same way. This is the part that I think is often missed in that conversation. Is we've had a lot of developments, not necessarily new cybersecurity requirements, like from the framework side of the house. The requirement to implement NIST 800-171 has been there for all these years, 9 years. But understandings of external service providers and the obligation related to MSPs, MSSPs, cloud service providers, the FedRAMP equivalency concerns, DFAR 7019 and 7020 obligations, the essential the essential understanding of how to use SPURS, how to do a self-assessment, the assessment guide, the DoD assessment methodology, how companies were to understand the requirements against assessment objectives. Mm-hmm. We've not had that for 9 years. Mm-hmm. So there are people who, yes, DoD, that is true. We have had NIST 800-171, right? I agree with you. But the understanding of that has evolved. At least since 2020, right? At least since the interim rule. So, I think the first year everybody thought it was 800-171, right?
When it's 800-171 alpha that everybody should be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it is 800-171 and DFAR 7012, and the means of assessing it is 800-171 alpha. But that's my point, is the understanding of what 800-171 is and means, what it means for 3.1.1 to be implemented. People can look at limit system access to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of users and devices, right? That's the control from the 110 of 800-171 Rev 2. So people can look at that and not, because they didn't have the objectives before 2020, they could have been like, oh yeah, I have Active Directory. We're good. I don't create user accounts in my cloud service providers unless there's somebody that I want in there. But wait, when we got the objectives, right? I gave a talk about this at CMMC Day of some of the most commonly misunderstood requirements. When we got to CMMC Day and when we got the objectives, you see objective A, alpha, authorized users are identified. Oh, hold on. There's a step here that's actually something that I have to tangibly be able to prove that I have actually identified not just system users, that's 3.5.1, but I've identified authorized users, which means I need to be able to prove that they're authorized. Yeah, exactly. There's these are things that are, it's more than just conceptual affirmations. I'm not just going to be able to write my system security plan, which was a requirement and is a requirement in 71. They would know that, develop a system security plan. But there was nothing about these assessment objectives that really grounded and provided tangible context, other than the discussion from 800-171 for what it meant for this control to actually be implemented. Not just that it exists as a control. Obviously, it was a control, but what it meant to be actually implemented. I mean, when IntelliGRC first got started, we were doing gap assessments for 800-171 prior to the assessment objectives before they came out, using 853 assessment guidelines. So it's like, but that's because we had RMF experience as a company, but DIB contractors might not have RMF experience. How are they supposed to know? Even like the 853 level assessment guidance. So all I'm saying is my point here is that I really do empathize with DIB contractors. Not all of them, right? It still has been 5 years, right, since the interim rule. But I do think that things have picked up since the interim rule as an outpouring and benefit of the interim rule and the assessment guidance and all the things that we were looking forward to, with the final rule and obviously with the 48 CFR on the way. So that's just my 2 cents. I think I'm optimistic, and I think to your guys' point, and Ed, I wanted to touch on something you said. You said that, you are trying to be strategic with CEOs and leadership of companies. You said multiple conversations with CEOs about this very nuance, that it's more than just, it's a business decision. It's something that's good for your business. And I wanted to ask, I asked this kind of before, but I wanted to kind of drill it home. How is leadership actually seeming to be adopting your advice? Like, does it actually seem like many of your, I know you said that for the customers that are the new customers that you're having, is that kind of part of the criteria for whether you're going to do business with a contractor? Is if we tell you that this is the requirement and all you're concerned about is bare minimum implementation and not really using our services to the fullest, that's not good for you and it's not good for us. Is that kind of part of the conversation that you guys have when vetting a new customer?
That's definitely part of the conversation, and I also wanted to touch on the on the prior conversation about how the program is more defined and we understand it better. I love that you guys geeked out on that, but from a business perspective, CEOs don't care. They're trying to say, how do I pay for this? I will let the nerds figure out how to do it, and I want my cert.
Yeah.
And this is, if I would say one thing to the DoD, is implement this program and put it into contracts. Because your argument that it's been in contracts for the last 10 years and we've been paying you to do this, to me is an invalid argument. Because if I were to increase my rates to pay for cybersecurity and CMMC, I would have never won the contract in the first place. I wouldn't have the contract because no one was doing it. Whether you think they were or not, they're signing the contract. No one was doing the cybersecurity. The big boys, different story, but no one was doing it. So the competitive landscape never priced it in. So the number one thing the DoD is implement the program. So now that I can price into my rates that I have CMMC level 2, and you will pay for it now because it's an authorized cost. It's an allowable cost. The program maintenance, and not developing the program, but maintaining the program. So now I can actually get that money to then, when David was saying, to put it into my program to do this. And so I get what they're saying is that you should have taken the money we gave you over the last 10 years and built this program. You never really gave me that money. I would not have this contract if my rate was $10 more than that rate, because that person's not doing CMMC and I am. I'll never win a contract, you know? And because they were never checking
that particular argument. But that is
because the argument was the contracting officer prior to that never said, "Where's your CMMC cert?" If I rolled up and said, "Hey, I'm certified in CMMC," and they're not, the contracting officer's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Who cares? I'm complying with 80171 and they're not." They're like, "Who cares? I don't know what you mean. They're $10 million cheaper than you." Well, that's why they're $10 million cheaper than me. Contracting officer would be like, "Your argument's invalid. That's not really a requirement. I don't see that it has to be a checkbox." Like if you're.
That is a really good insight. Not to cut you off, that is a really good insight. I do wonder what your thoughts about DFAR 7024. So, and I let me preface this by saying I agree with you. By the way, I agree with you that, and I've actually heard from the lips of actually relatively recently a KO who was pretty explicit about cost being the only differentiator. Right, it was that this contractor was cheaper than the other one as the primary means. But DFAR 7024 requires that the contracting officer, the person making the decision for award, is they have to consider the entry into SBRS as part of their award consideration. And then the last line of it, though. Exactly. The last line of it says other circumstances and mitigating factors, or whatever the language is, maybe also be configured in as well, giving them essentially, this contractor might be a negative 60 in SPRS, and this other one might be a negative 70 in SPRS. But the negative 71, obviously, that's worse from a security risk perspective, but they're $10 million cheaper. So that's the mitigating factor. We're going to go with them. So I'm just curious what your thoughts on that element, and if you've seen that live in your work.
Until it's an on-off switch, either you have the cert or you don't get the award, it's not going to matter. And in government contracts, you either have the ISO 27001 cert and you get the points, or you have CMMI level 3 for your development. Like 8A stars. If you're not CMMC level 3 or CMMI level 3 for your development,
right,
you can't be on the contract. It's a yes or no. And so right now, the contracting officer, the way they view it, and I've talked to them, I go on the SPRS and make sure you have a score. I don't know what these numbers mean. I don't know what negative 200 means. I don't know what 110 means. All I know is that I'm required by this clause to go in there and check to make sure you have a SPRS score. And I know this because some of our customers have gotten freaked out where we can't get an award because we never went in and put in our SPRS score. And this is going through the remediation. So let's go in and do it. So we go in and put a negative 203 for them. We don't do it. They do it. Put a negative 203. They get the award the next day. The contracting officer doesn't even know. All they know is that they have to have an entry in SPRS. That's the requirement. And so, and then, but then again, why are you putting it on a contract? They're an acquisition specialist. They're not a cybersecurity specialist. They don't know. Just as the contracting officer doesn't audit your financials. The Defense Contract Audit Agency is the one that comes in and audits your financials to prove that your burdens are correct and that you're charging the government correctly. You don't ask a contracting officer to be like, "Oh, go look at their chart of accounts. Look at how they're doing the buildups. Make sure that their fringe and their G&A overhead is correct." That's not their job. Their job is to issue contracts. They are acquisition experts. So in their minds, either you make it black and white for me, either I have this piece of paper from a C3PAO from DIBCAC and I can see it. If they don't have it, they don't get an award. Yeah. If they have it, they get an award. I can understand that.
So you really empathize with the DoD's position on that then as well. It sounds like you really want this to be a clear, more black and white than not, whereas many want it to remain a wishy-washy. Maybe that's a too derogatory of a term, but in my opinion, a wishy-washy, and I think you agree with this, a wishy-washy perspective of what's the gut reaction of the KO, as opposed to, have you met these checklist items? If not, you're not getting the contract.
Yeah, and it's a harsh reality, and I know it's. I feel the small business side. I understand the DIB's perspective on this, but until the DoD actually pays the money for it, and the only way to do that is to make it an even playing field.
Yeah.
Is I'm coming in, we both have the cert, and then now our rates include all of that, cybersecurity. So now it depends on the other things. How, is your technical approach better? Are you able to add efficiencies that are different? Are you bringing a solution that might be a little bit better or not? It's not an even playing field because I play on both sides. We're certified.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of costs that go into it. And then I lose to people I know that have Gmail accounts. That's their cybersecurity. And I'm in GCC High. I'm paying all this money. I can't compete even with the same exact or a better technical approach, better past performance, better resumes. I lose to somebody who has a lower cost.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree that that is one of the biggest benefits of, hopefully when the 48 CFR drops and things start rolling out, over the phased rollout. And obviously the DoD also has, they mentioned here recently in their last town hall. I know it wasn't the town hall, it was a CS2 talk that Mr. Glooly had with Jacob Horn. But they said they still reserve the right to implement them quicker on specific contracts as they see fit. So I definitely agree that from a competition perspective, 100%. I mean, there's no incentive
Or give an incentive. You said the right word.
Yeah.
If I have the cert and they don't, give me a 10% cost break. So look, we're gonna say that if you're still 10% higher, then we can still award it to you because we know you're implementing security clearance. So if you want to make it more squishy, give some incentive to drive the DIB contractors to your way of thinking. Either make it black and white, or give the people that have actually spent the money and are spending the money, give them a break because they are going to cost more. And you can't LPTA something if you're not being the lowest technically acceptable. If cybersecurity is not a technically acceptable criteria in the contract, then I'm going to lose because we're not being compared against the same thing, and I'm going to be more expensive.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. David, from your perspective, when you're as the in-house person that under obviously the orders of Ed, the command of Ed, I mean, what is your view on timeline and rigor and continuous monitoring, all those things that come, especially as you're trying to maintain the cert and be ready to bid on contracts? So what does it look like as the security manager having to deal with the day in, day out, and month in, month out, year in, year out perspective of the responsibility side of it, like actually implementing it in-house?
Yeah, I would say for me it's probably easy because I'm used to it and I do it all the time. But I will tell you my experience, definitely there is a difference, and it kind of goes back to what is our ideal customer, and to your comment too about culture. If we have a customer whose leadership understands that this isn't an IT problem only, they have a culture. They understand the culture shift that's about to occur in their company. Those tend to be good customers because it's not the IT guy breaking his head trying to make everybody do something. Leadership saying, "Hey, we're getting this done. This is our next mission," and the whole company moves. The companies where leadership it's the IT guy's problem, and all these things don't apply to me. Those are tougher companies to deal with because they haven't considered the culture shift that's going to happen, and that they're not the entire company truly isn't on board.
Yeah. So 2 questions. First off, just to clarify, are you in-house security management, or are you on the MSP side helping customers with their security management, or both? Both. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you're implementing both on both sides. Do you think, from your experience, that the cultural shift and adoption, I'm really grounded on this term adoption. Do you where they really affirm that, yes, this is something we need to do because this is good for us? That's adoption. That's what I mean by adoption. Do you think that the 12 to 18 month timeline is factoring in the time it takes to shift culture, or do you think that's not reasonable or reasonable? What are your thoughts?
I seriously think that the technical implementation can be done in a year, 12 months, and I think the cultural shift can begin positively in 12 months. I think you can definitely initiate good momentum within the company to start moving towards kind of that mindset, that security first mindset, absolutely within 12 months, if leadership's on board.
That is a really good qualifier.
If they're not on board, I've seen it takes longer because it just takes things. There's other priorities than, and fully understandable, there's other priorities that pump cybersecurity compliance down to,
Because, and that's a really good point. My thought was, I've seen it firsthand where they're trying to roll out requirements. They're writing the policies. They're doing the technical configurations, and yet the IT manager still has a single account for both their everyday work and their administrative work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if there's no acknowledgement, like round table, all hands on deck acknowledgement that we have to change, as our habits as workers has to change from the top down, like from the most pillar people, including the CEO, including the eds of the world, have to change the way they do things to make sure that they're aligning themselves with the requirements. How do you expect the warehouse worker? How do you expect the accountant? How do you expect the HR person not to go into this room where the CUI file cabinet is? Like, how do you expect them not to tailgate somebody when one person scans their RFID badge and not waiting to scan their own?
And unfortunately, and at least from my experience, right, and this is going back to my previous company, and kind of what started me in compliance was a SOC 2 event, and I realized quickly how important the administrative part was and how, the culture part. Because what I found was I was VP of IT, running my IT department, no problem, that was good. But then when it came to getting the entire company to move towards the SOC 2, I quickly found out that one, the employees in other departments would not move unless their manager was on board, and the manager wasn't on board if the CEO wasn't on board. So
good night.
One of the I guess success stories was that once I realized that, I went right to the CEO, had a meeting with him. I was like, "Look, sir, I need you to put out some emails about this, and I need you to be the face of this effort so that we can get some traction in the rest of the company." Great leader. He understood. He did it, and that made that entire process so much easier versus trying to just battle uphill with every department trying to get whatever it is that we're trying to get implemented.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. Ed, you seeing the same thing?
Well, maybe it's not three, but I think leadership falls into three categories, and there's what David was talking about. Leadership has to be on board, and they have to be driving it, and they have to be involved. And I think that's a missing component. I see DIB contractors who say, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to implement the security controls. We're going to get CMMC certified. And they don't engage, or they don't bother to really ask the questions. And I say that and going back to the drivers on the MSSP side are to have as little variance and as little change in every solution that they're implementing. They want it just to hit. And that's how it's they want it to be a commodity that prints money for them.
Yeah.
If the business owners aren't engaged, there's a lot of administrative controls. They're going to be given, this is how you do things, and this is how it works. And if you just agree with it, I've seen it, and I do get frustrated. And they're like, well, I'm not an IT person. I said, but you have to understand this program because it's going to paint you into a box and you're not going to be able to operate your business. But the hardest thing, you're going to fail an audit because you don't know what they're doing and they're not doing the right thing. And it's going to come back on you, not the MSP, that you are the business owner. You're the one that signed that SSP. You have to understand it. And I think that's a really hard thing for a person that maybe you're a construction company, you grew up on construction, you worked as a mason, you built your own company. You don't care about cybersecurity, but you have to take a little bit of yourselves to care and understand because it's not all technical, it's administrative. And to have a provider lead you down a path that's going to put you in a bad situation, they just don't know. And I do get angry at people that do that, but I understand why they're doing it. But you're taking advantage of a business owner that's trusting you. So that relationship has to be important. Yeah. It has to be valued at the senior level. And the senior level managers and C-suite have to be engaged.
Yeah.
And I know they don't want to, and I know they hate it. But you have to understand it at least more than a base level. You have to understand it at a moderate level, what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the primary things that, Dave, I saw you're a CISSP, so that's like one of the things that we were taught in CISSP is how to approach leadership. Like what is the point of being a CISSP certified security professional? It's to let the leadership know, inform them, make sure they are aware of the risks and move on. It's not for you to fix the problem, it's for them to make the decision and then shift that responsibility onto who it belongs to administratively.
But that's not what's happening.
That's not what's happening.
MSPs are making all the decisions.
Yeah.
They're deciding what the risks are. They're deciding what the administrative controls are, what the processes, and the business owner is just like, great, I'm glad you took care of all that for me. And that's not the right answer from the business perspective. You are right. You should be advised by your partner as to what is going on. And this is what you are taking on. These are the risks associated with it. And then you make the decision. Do you want to do A, B, C, or D?
Yeah.
And then we'll move on.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I think we could speak more to business leaders in our, with all the LinkedIn posts and everything. Like, even myself, I'm really often talking to implementers. I'm talking to, the technical guys or the policy writers or, the assessors, things like that. But yeah, if we could speak more to business leadership, I think that would actually expedite everything else that we're trying to do at the lower levels, right? If there was managerial buy-in, which has always been the problem, right? Is management buy-in, making sure that the CEO is just as accountable to using MFA as everyone else, right? Not giving them exceptions and letting them be the trendsetters that oppose the governance program. So I totally agree. I did want to ask, being cognizant of time, I did want to ask what are the next couple of years for DTS looking like when it comes to innovation and projects and government work?
Give away all my secrets now?
Yeah, well, of course I have to.
Oh, man.
Live on the air.
Right. I'll just give away your secrets.
That's okay too. Yeah. I want to talk about that really before we get off.
I think one is trying to innovate, and so we're doing it across the board. And I tell my team all the time. I say, I apologize for being me, but when we set a goalpost and we get there, we're not going to stop there. We're going to go on. But I really appreciate all the work that we did to get to this objective. And I've heard it. There's been exit interviews, and the people have said, Ed just doesn't stop. Once we achieve something, he wants to achieve something else. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. And he's like, he's effing exhausting. And I'm like, well, that's the way it goes. But we're looking to innovate, and anywhere we can use technology or tools or AI. I know AI is a funny term. It doesn't really work in most places, but it can be used appropriately. Maybe it'll work great here. But IntelliGRC is something that that we view as a value add to our customers that's going to then make the reviews faster, the annual audits faster, the regular audits faster. Not that it's cookie cutter. We start with something, but then we can have all the evidence, all the documentation, all the change orders. And I'm really excited about what you guys are about to put out that I think will really, really help. So having partners in this is very important. And AvePoint is another one of our partners we're engaged with. They have some great things. And
they do.
Obviously Microsoft has come in GCs across the board. Their solutions have come way down the road. I mean, years ago, it was terrible trying to navigate everything, but they, I always say Microsoft, they sit back, they let every other company develop all the cool stuff and they either buy them or just implement it themselves, So Microsoft, Defender, Sentinel, Purview, Intune, Entra IDs come a long way.
Yeah.
But automation, anything that we can do to make it cheaper, faster, and better.
Yeah.
You can make it cheaper and faster. It might not be better.
Yeah.
But we want quality outputs. We want to increase our customer cybersecurity posture. Stay compliant. Keep increasing your posture. What can we do to help your business get more business? Because I want you to go from 50 to 100 to 150 to 200. And one day being like, hey, Ed, we have our own cybersecurity shop. That's great. We'll hand everything over to you. We really appreciate working with you. I want you to be a 1,000-person company. I want you to be successful. Compliance. Yeah, I want you to be compliant too, but I want to see you grow. I want to see you fire me one day because you have a shop of your own CISO, your own CIO, your own cybersecurity experts, your own security operations folks, because you're that big and you're able to handle it on your own.
Yeah, take up the mantle that you've been able to lay the foundation for. Yeah, that's really good. I've never heard a MSP say that they're looking forward to the day that they're fired because you did such a good job setting them up for success.
Yeah,
that's good.
Well, and I think it's great. I think it's great because it really isn't. It's a testament to the transformation we can help companies with, and really move the ball down the road. So,
right, especially growth-minded companies, right, where that is a very possible reality for them one day. You help them maintain their contracts and maintain cybersecurity inside, and actually adopt it again using that term, but which will lead to, if they are truly growth-minded, will lead to exponential growth in the future, especially if they're in DoD contracting. I mean, I know there's uncertainty with the current contracting landscape and DoD and just federal work in general, but it's not always going to be that way.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll come back. Everything goes back. It's a pendulum. It happens.
Yes.
It's life. But I think that's a different perspective. And you said you've never heard an MSP say that. It's because I own a government contracting business, and I have partnered with outsourced financial, outsourced contracts, outsourced legal, and then the day that I'm able to hire a CFO, the day that I'm able to hire a chief legal officer, that's success for me. And I thank them. Thanks for helping me get my chart of accounts together. Thanks for helping me close the books. Thanks for helping me with my taxes. Now we're big enough to afford a full FTE or 2 FTEs. And I appreciate them taking me on when I was this little baby company and I knew nothing about this. And, we still have great relationships. And then if something hard comes up, I'm still going back to them saying, I can't figure this out, or, we need help.
They're partnerships. At the end of the day, they're invaluable partnerships. So,
And that's, to me, that's a sign of they did their job to help me. We grew together, and there's no animosity here. It's just we did it. Let's keep going in that direction. And anytime I need help, a lot of them don't even charge me. I mean, I've worked with them for years. I call them and say, "Hey, what about this?" And they were like, "Oh, code of whatever, financial regulations 1.7.7.6 says you got to do this." And be like, "I don't want to do it." And they're like, "We know you don't want to do it, but you have to." I'm like, "Okay, fine."
Hey, it sounds like GRC.
Sounds like GRC. Yep.
Nice. Well, guys, what final words of encouragement do you have to business leaders, David, from you, to implementers and people who are heavily involved in maintaining things internally and other MSPs. What do you guys have as a final send off to them?
I would say one, most and foremost, this is doable, right? All this stuff is doable. Find a partner, start the journey. Small bites will eat the elephant. You'll be okay. But you have to start the journey, and you have to be willing to start the journey. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, there's a passage that I really like where it talks about a righteous person falls down, but what differentiates them is what differentiates them from somebody who's not righteous is somebody who gets back up after they fall. So like one of the things that comes up with GRC a lot is you can tell that there's going to be times when you're going to forget to do that policy process. You're going to forget to do what you're required to do. Don't get discouraged. I 100% agree with that. Take one little bites at a time, and when you fall off the wagon, get back on it. I think that's really good. Ed, what do you got?
I think I'll go with the journey. As I said, look at this as something that's going to integrate into your business to make you better and get you to the next level. Cybersecurity, I've sat in the rooms with the really smart people. This industry is growing because there's a need for it. So if you think getting away from, as David said earlier, getting away from DoD so you don't have to do this, probably is not the best strategic business decision. The DoD is put a framework in place that I think gives you some guidelines. They put out assessment guides. They're really trying to help you understand and do this. And following this model will get you far down a path. Then you can look at spending the time and money and effort that you need along your journey to get you to where you need to go. So think of it as a journey. Find the right partners. It's ever evolving. It's never just stop. The adversaries are going to change. The techniques are going to change. The tools are going to change. So just, it's, unfortunately it's not something you can just, set it and forget it like the old, whatever that cooker thing was. But really ingrain it. And I can tell you my own personal side and we're still evolving, but, once you have it implemented and you're really taking care of a lot of your risk, it does help you sleep at night. Because you can go to bed being like, I know I'm doing the right thing. And then you wake up and David will be like, well, we got to do this and this and this now. And they're like, oh, no. See, he dropped off right there.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how it works.
and the balance.
So, it's you think you're there, but it does give you a level of comfort that you're protecting your customers' data. You're doing the right thing, but doing the right thing never gets you anywhere in business. But you have to do it to ensure that you're protecting your primes, your customer's data. And even in the civilian world, you're going to start seeing companies, the big companies, only doing business, supply chain risk management, with companies that can prove that they're secure. It could be SOC 2 Type 2, it could be high trust, it could be FedRAMP, it could be TAA compliance, it can be CMMC. They're going to ask for your security documentation.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of supply chain risk management, right? It's making sure that the people who you're buying things from, acquiring things from, working with are not screwing you on the back end, right? Are not taking all of the things that make them so valuable to you and just utterly destroying it by, having way open gaps and holes and things like that. So 100%.
You think JP Morgan, Ford, GM, Bank of America aren't going to say, oh, come in and develop some apps for us and we're not going to check your security.
Yeah.
No.
Even on the commercial side. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good point. You
can try to run, but you can't hide.
Yeah. That's a good perspective is, maybe the upfront costs of CMMC is not nearly the amount of value that your contracts would be worth, right? So maybe in the moment that makes sense as a business decision to move away, But at the end of the day, your business, I think, fundamentally needs cybersecurity principles to be put in place, because regardless of what work you're going to do, you're going to have some type of obligation to your customer, even if it's just merely ethical and not regulatory. So that's a really good point.
And I know a bunch of Marines that own a cupcake shop, and they won't do business with anybody that hasn't met certain cybersecurity standards.
What?
Yeah. Because they don't want their customers' credit card information stolen. They don't want their customers' emails stolen. They don't want their customers' phone numbers stolen. Because that breach to them is a loss of trust. And they have a personal trust relationship with their customers. So if you're going to come in and do some type of IT work, some type of, your point of sale system, show me that it's secure.
Marketing,
give me your,
all that stuff.
Marketing, anything. If you have access to our networks or our information, then you have to say how you're going to protect it. And the only reason they're doing that is because they came from a DoD information security, classified, highly classified. They understand that protection of that information. Your emails, I mean, China, Russia has all our social security numbers, emails, fingerprints, all that stuff. But your personal information and your emails that your customers are giving, they really take that seriously. And if it gets out, they just lose that trust, and they'll go to the other cupcake shop. Like, man, my email got out, my phone number got out, I got all these phishing emails and phishing texts, came from you guys. It's irritating to your customers. Maybe they fall for it, maybe they don't, but you just pissed off a bunch of people that you didn't need to piss off by doing something that you could have prevented.
100%. Yeah, that's really good. Well, I appreciate you, Ed and David, coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation. We didn't get to all the topics that I wanted to, but we've been recording for almost 2 hours here. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. It was awesome learning about you guys, learning more about what you guys do at DTS, learning about your backgrounds. And I'm hopeful for you guys for the future. It sounds like you guys have a good head on your shoulders. So keep on keeping on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us, Stephen.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.